I'm very pleased that we've moved ahead since those days. We've been participating in each COP since 2007, and we've been partnering with our industry members, ITU industry members. We have about 700 companies, members of ITU. So we partnered with them to bring across the message to these conferences about the importance of ICTs, and we did so also in partnership with Jesse. So I'm very pleased that we now have an event such as this dealing with ICTs and climate change. And I don't know if it's been mentioned, but on Wednesday, at the Momentum for Change event, we will be launching a new coalition to further advocate for recognizing the importance of ICTs and dealing with the mitigation and adaptation to climate change. Because the ICT sector has witnessed incredible growth over the last 10 years. And the number of mobile subscribers, for example, has gone from 2.75 billion to 7.38 billion today. And there are 4.6 billion people with mobile phones. 2.2 billion of those are using smartphones. But this number is going to continue to increase at a rapid rate. And also, of course, we have Internet of Things and 5G coming along, with predictions of 50 billion devices that will be connected to the Internet by 2020. So clearly, the ICT sector energy consumption is likely to grow, simply because of the number of devices that will be being used. So in ITU, we've been emphasizing the importance of energy efficient access to the information and knowledge society. So essential for sustainable socio-economic development for the world. But to really benefit from access to the internet, all the innovative products and services available on the internet, you really need to have a high-speed broadband access. So this is something that ITU, as the lead UN agency for ICTs, is continually advocating, and we do that in a number of ways. As I mentioned, access to the internet for most people means using their mobile phone, their smartphone. So there are more and more users demanding faster and faster connection to download more and more data. This places a great strain on the radio spectrum, and the need for additional spectrum for mobile use has been recognized in the ITU for some years. These allocations need to be agreed internationally, otherwise mobile phones won't work when you move from one country to another, but also the cost of the phones would be far greater if they weren't complying to an international standard. So in ITU we maintain the international treaty on the use of spectrum and satellite orbit. And that has been the case for ITU for now 110 years. Next month we celebrate the very first international treaty on the use of the spectrum. And of course, the devices wouldn't interoperate if they didn't comply to international standards. And that again is something that ITU has been doing for even longer than 110 years. So we're very busy in ITU developing these international standards, but placing a lot of emphasis on the need for energy efficiency We also provide guidance on the use of ICTs to mitigate and adapt to climate change. Let me give you a few examples. So we have a standard called ITU recommendation, ITU TL.1300. The ITU standards are all called recommendations, by the way. So this L.1300 is on best practices for green data centers, and associated standard L.1302 on assessment of energy efficiency of infrastructure in data and telecom centers. Just these two standards alone, it's estimated, can reduce the energy consumption of data centers by more than 50%. Recommendation L.1002 is a new standard just recently adopted in ITU. It's an energy efficient universal charger for laptops and other portable devices. And this is expected to lead to considerable saving in energy consumption, but also on e-waste, because it's a universal charger. It can be used for different manufacturers' devices. And it follows the example of previous standards ITU has adopted in this area, such as the L1000, the universal charger for mobile phones, and L1001 for XDSL modems. We also have a number of standards which really show the potential of ICTs for mitigating and adapting to climate change. These are called the L.1500 series. All the ITU standards are available on the ITU website for downloading free of charge. And I believe this really shows ITU's commitment to working on climate action. Bringing the benefits of all this technology to all the world's citizens, especially those in developing countries, is a priority for ITU. One thing we do to help that is to encourage countries to adopt the policies and the regulatory environment which will encourage investment in the rollout of broadband, the incentive for them to see that they can make a profit on a decent return on investment. And these policies are incorporated into what we call national broadband plans. So the national broadband plans are adopted by governments to show their commitment to roll out this infrastructure of broadband access. Broadband, of course, no longer being a luxury, but an essential utility. And it's estimated that countries that have adopted national broadband plans have seen an increase in the rollout of both the fixed and the mobile penetration in the country. Out of 189 countries which ITU has statistics on, 151 have adopted national broadband plans. But if you look at these plans, unfortunately, hardly any mention climate change. And there are no commitments in these plans for addressing climate change. So clearly, this is a serious omission, and we're advocating the inclusion of climate change strategies in national broadband plans. More needs to be done to bring awareness of the importance of ICTs to address this. And we encourage all governments to incorporate this in their national broadband plans. So over these 10 years, we've seen ITU come a long way from that very first publication of the ICTs and climate change. We believe that we made a good start, but a lot more needs to be done. And we need a positive response from governments, the governments that are members of ITU. 193 of them really need to stand up and amend these plans to ensure that we have climate change included in them. So I hope that events such as this, other side events during the COP, will really help to bring this message across. And I look forward to a very interesting lineup of presentations we have in this session. And I'm hoping that it will really help to drive us forward down this path that we're all very much committed to. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. I would like to take the opportunity to invite all the speakers actually of this session to join me. So starting from Mrs. Frances Way from CDP, and then Thierry Valette from Huawei, Bill Whale from Facebook, and then Commissioner also, and Gabrielle from BT, Gabrielle Ginet. So I feel very honored actually to be surrounded by many distinguished experts in this area. And well, I don't want actually to read any of their bios, which I'm sure that you can Google, but just I would like to leave some time for debate and actually invite immediately Frances to share with us her view, and then probably we can have a quick discussion and see how, of course, the floor interacts. Frances, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let's bring these down a little bit. Yes, I'm Chief Operating Officer at CDP. For those of you that don't know CDP, we provide the global environmental reporting platform for cities and companies. And we give that data back to the shareholders of the companies or through the supply chains. So I'm going to sort of talk a bit more generally about what we're seeing in the data that's being disclosed by ICT companies, the kinds of trends that we're seeing that's happening, and then I'm sure you'll hear sort of in more detail from the companies themselves about their own initiatives. So generally, reporting by ICT companies is proving positive. We had 131 companies in 2016 publicly report that they'd managed to reduce the emissions in their operations versus 2015. We're also seeing a positive increase in the number of companies setting reduction targets. They're motivated generally by the risk of regulation, especially electricity prices. A lot of companies cite the fact that a 10% increase in electricity could add sort of between $4 and $10 million per annum to their operating costs. And then changes in consumer behaviour are obviously seen as both a risk and an opportunity, but reputational risk is always quite prominent there. A key opportunity in terms of regulation cited by a number of companies is actually product efficiency regulation. And I think that is a sort of really key area where these companies could really get competitive advantage. Note that in 2016, the IT companies reported total annual savings of over $1 billion from emission reduction projects within their own companies. So we know that there's a huge business case for doing this. In terms of what the leading companies are doing, CDP is part of the Women Business Coalition, along with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. And one of the initiatives we get companies to sign up to is science-based targets, and we're part of the Science-Based Targets Initiative with WRI and WWF and UN Global Compact. Now, the science part of science-based targets is really focusing on the carbon budget available for a sector. It's really about companies doing their fair share. Until we sort of started this initiative, companies were so focused really on how much they were going to reduce year to year in absolute terms. Nobody was really kind of thinking about whether this made sense in terms of a transition plan. So science-based targets tries to get the sort of psychology a little bit different, get the companies thinking about where they need to go to, and then whether they're on the correct trajectory to get there. Under the initiative's guidelines, the companies have to include Scope 1 and 2, but also if more than 40% of their footprint is in Scope 3, then that needs to be included, and they need to express it in both absolute and intensity terms. Now, there are already 22 ICT companies that have committed to set a science-based target. And for example, Dell have expanded their target so that it has been accredited as science-based. it's no longer just focused on Scope 1 and 2, it also has a big focus on their customers. So as well as reducing their emissions by half by 2020 versus 2010, they now also have a target related to reducing the energy in the products consumed. Then we also have, there's another initiative called RE100, led by the Climate Group, which many of you might have heard of. These companies are committing to get to 100% renewable purchased energy, and I'm sure Facebook will talk about this in more detail as well. But companies such as Apple, BT, Google, Hewlett-Packard Enterprises, Microsoft, Facebook, etc., have already made this commitment.
This has been a very, very tough week because our country elected a man who wants things to go in a very different direction. And what I want you to know here today is that the commitment of California to lead on this is actually even stronger now. We are not putting the foot on the brake, we're putting the foot on the accelerator. Actually, in our elections in the state of California, the legislature got greener, okay? So, and if you think about California as a cradle for so many of the leading technology companies, you know, Google and Apple and Facebook and Twitter and Uber and Tesla and so many others, just to understand, I want to share with you a little bit about the policy environment that they're operating in California, because we are a state that absolutely believes the future is clean energy. So we have now a law requiring 50% renewable energy by 2030. That's the state law. So all these companies are going to get, as a minimum, 50% by 2030. But the change that's happening now is happening very quickly. So we were at just 12% renewable energy in 2008. Today we're at 26% renewable energy. You look at the cost, we're now entering the final 3 months of President Obama's term in office. When he started as President of the United States, the price of wind power has fallen by 62%.
Thank you very much, Christina, and good afternoon, everybody. Today, I just wanted to share with you some of the actions that we at BT have taken as we turn ambition on climate change into action and implementation. BT's environmental sustainability journey actually started already back in 1992, and that's almost 25 years ago now, when we first began to measure our corporate carbon footprint and set our first reduction targets. We have since then continued to focus on carbon reduction and set a goal to cut our carbon emissions intensity by 80% by 2020 against the 1996-97 baseline, a goal that we actually achieved ahead of target last year. And we've been involved in the work of the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, testing their new product standards and measuring the carbon footprints of our key products against that standard.